Welcome to One-on-One with Expert Flyer. I'm your host, Lisa Caslett, and today we're talking to Jason Steele. He is back with us again. It's been a while, but Jason is a journalist who specializes in award travel, credit cards, and other areas of personal finance. Thanks so much for coming back, Jason.
Great to be here.
Good. So, we frequently cover airline loyalty programs and, ways to get upgrades and all that kind of fun stuff, because that's what our audience likes to hear about. One of the things that we were thinking about lately was, since, all the major airlines have really moved from a miles flown model to a dollars spent model in their loyalty programs, we started thinking, whatever happened to, the old-fashioned mileage run? Folks around this time of year would start planning their trips to kind of maintain their status or maybe increase their status. So are mileage runs gone? Or do they still exist in another fashion?
Yeah, well, certainly the traditional mileage run is pretty much gone. This would be when, let's say there'd be a discounted airfare, say $100 round trip transcontinental, say New York to LA. The airlines would get in this intense competition, and maybe during a slow season they'd offer something like that. And so for that $100, you would get on the plane and you would maybe accumulate 5,000 miles round trip. And if those 5,000 miles were worth that $100 to you, then this was a great mileage run. And often those mileage runs would be made worth it if there was another promotion going on, like let's say there's double miles or a big bonus if you complete a certain number of miles within a certain time. But as you referred to, within the last few years, the airlines have gone from awarding miles based on, the miles you flew to actually the dollars you spent. Mm-hmm. So depending on the status level you hold with the airline, it'll be 5 to maybe 11 miles per dollar spent. But of course, that removes any component of a traditional mileage run where you said, okay, well, for this inexpensive airfare, I'm going to accumulate all these miles. Well, the fact that it's expensive now means that you will not accumulate all these miles. But of course, there is an exception. The exception is the status. Airlines are still awarding elite status based on the miles, largely based on the miles you fly, with a couple caveats. Mm-hmm. So it still will make sense, especially around this time of year when the demand is low, so airfares are often low. Mm-hmm. We're approaching the end of the year, so people are getting nervous about retaining the elite status they had in the previous year. Well, if the airline is still awarding elite status based on the miles you fly, then it can be worth it. And so another component of these mileage runs was often these circuitous routing. So certainly from New York to LA and back, being maybe 5,000-6,000 miles nonstop might not be worth it for $100. But what if on your way from New York to LA, you changed planes first in Atlanta and then in Minneapolis? So now you're 6,000 miles, maybe 8,000 miles. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So all of a sudden you have 8,000 miles you might get towards your requalification of elite status, which is actually quite valuable. That will potentially give you upgrades either to the Economy Plus or Premium Economy, or even, it's less common now, but first class upgrades are certainly there for the highest status levels. Also, all sorts of fee waivers, priority treatment when you have bad weather or mechanical delays and cancellations are all worth it to people who crave that elite status. So there will still be people who either make a pure mileage run, which is an unnecessary trip where they just return as soon as they arrive, or maybe they'll just do something like add a segment or two, kind of instead of taking that nonstop, let's change planes in Houston on our way from New York to Chicago and get a lot more miles flown than they would have otherwise.
Now, let's say, what happens if you were able to score a relatively inexpensive business class seat? Does that change the formula in any way, shape, or form because it's a business class seat?
Certainly. The airlines will offer you bonuses for a higher class of service. So a business class seat might give you a 50 or 100% bonus in those elite qualifying miles, also the regular miles. But, unless it's a mistake there, you're never really going to accumulate, business class miles at a rate that's worth the spend, just take an unnecessary trip.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, that those double miles, especially those double elite qualifying miles, might certainly be worth it if the premium for business class is relatively low. So maybe if you could find a $2,000 round trip ticket to Europe in business class, which would be a great deal if you found it. If that's compared to, I don't know, $1,200 in coach, a lot of people might say, well, I'll spend the $800. Obviously, I'll enjoy business class. Maybe I wouldn't have spent the $800 normally, but now I'm going to get double elite qualifying miles, and that will propel me to the next level of status. And then all through 2018 and the first month of 2019, I'll have this increased chance of getting first class upgrades and other upgrades and perks, and that'll partially offset that additional cost.
Okay. Now, there's still a couple of airlines out there. Isn't Alaska Airlines still maintaining the old-fashioned model?
That's correct. They are one of the last holdouts, and a lot of times customers flying or travelers flying on their partner airlines will credit their miles to Alaska simply for that reason. So, there's other airlines that are offering award miles based on the distance traveled, but you might say loosely based because they'll say on a discount ticket you only get 25% of miles flown.
Uh-huh.
Air France, in fact, recently or just last week, decided to go from that loosely based on the miles flown, with 25, 50, 75% of the miles received based on the fare class paid. They just threw that out the window and said, you know what, we're just going to go like the American Airlines have and do it based on the dollars paid for your ticket. They haven't quite released their formula, but they've kind of announced that they're going to be doing that in the middle of next year.
Okay. So I want to ask you about credit cards, but one more question about the airlines. If we talk about airlines like JetBlue, for example, are there a certain set of airlines that are offering more value in terms of points per dollar spent? So, do you have like a top 3 list of airlines that you like because they're offering greater value, even though it's a dollar spent model versus a miles flown?
Yeah, well, you do have those two models in terms of the accumulation, of which most of them, as we discussed, are now based on dollars. Then you have a model of different models based on different types of redemption models. So, for example, JetBlue you mentioned, Southwest is another example.
Mm-hmm.
The Virgin America program, which of course is going away at the end of the year, those have redemptions based on relatively fixed value for your points and miles. Most of the rest of the airlines still redeem based on the regions you fly to. Mm-hmm. So it's a certain number of miles depending on if you're flying domestically or between the U.S. and Europe, and of course your class of service. So is your question more in terms of the accumulation of miles or the redemption?
I think it was the redemption.
Okay. Yeah, on the redemption side, every airline's value of their miles is going to vary based on the value of what you can redeem them for. So I like the redemption of Southwest, JetBlue, and of course the Virgin America one. I like those for families, groups of travelers, and people who need to travel on peak periods like the holidays. That's excellent because all you need is to book far in advance, and award availability is not only unlimited, but it's pretty reasonably priced because you're essentially just buying your ticket with your miles based on the price of the ticket. So anytime there's no limitation of the number of tickets available. Whereas the other, American, United, Delta, they're going to vary their award availability pretty drastically and unpredictably based on the time of year you're flying and how many people are going with you. So you don't really want to collect, Delta, American, or United miles to take the family to Florida over Christmas break. Whereas JetBlue or Southwest miles are ideal as long as you've already booked your tickets by now.
Ah, good. All right. So when it comes to credit cards, where are we at now in terms of offering the best types of travel rewards? What are your favorites?
If you asked me this a couple of years ago, I would have told you that the best deals are with the flexible rewards programs. You are Ultimate Rewards, membership rewards, and thank you points, and the Starwood Preferred Guest Program. All those 4 programs allow you to transfer points and miles or transfer your rewards to points and miles with airline and possibly hotel programs. And over the last couple of years, I would say that has even gotten more true. As airlines continue to devalue their programs, they give you very, very little incentive to invest in accumulating miles with a single airline because they have demonstrated time and time again, some more than others, that you wake up one day and now the goalposts have moved, so to say. The award for 100,000 miles to Europe in business class is now 120 or 140,000 miles.
Right.
Which might be okay, but what's worse is that there's so few seats available at those lowest mileage levels that they might as well be selling unicorns. If the shelves of the store are empty, then what does it matter what the prices are?
It's true.
That is another way of looking at it.
It's true.
On the other hand, I'm not one of the award travel enthusiasts who's very doom and gloom. I still recognize that even if the awards cost twice as much as they used to, I'm often getting 3, 4, 5 points per dollar on my spending on various credit cards. Great. So, for example, with Chase Ultimate Rewards, there are still cards that'll give me 5 points per dollar on telecommunications, television, and office supply stores.
Awesome.
When I spend money on travel or dining, I use the Sapphire Reserve. I get 3 points per dollar. So the credit card industry being so competitive has outshone the airline industry, which frankly is not very competitive. And overall, I think the gains in credit card earnings are outweighing the losses in the value of the miles, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay, so if you were going to give one last tip for maintaining or increasing your status end of year, what's your best tip?
Well, certainly you do need to consider something like a mileage run. I have never personally flown somewhere just to fly back to accumulate miles. I don't feel like that's worth my time or even my money. But if you do have a cross-country trip and you are close to the next threshold, use a creative routing. Fly home and change planes in an unusual city. If you can accumulate those extra miles, that's great. Other ways to accumulate miles, especially with the Delta program, include getting the right Delta credit card, which will give you those elite qualifying miles. American has that as well. United no longer offers cards like that to new applicants, so there's no real shortcut with United. But I also tell people, of course, to be careful chasing status. That I don't think status is worth as much as it once was. Airlines have been saying publicly that they don't want to give away seats to people with status. They'd rather actually just sell them, maybe for $50. So you might take some of that extra money that you might have spent if you were going to spend money to get status, and you might just buy up to first class.
There you go.
With cash and stuff.
Okay. Good advice. Thank you again, Jason, and we want to have you back soon.
Love to be back.
Okay, take care.